In St. Louis, they're constantly lowering the bar for how they report on black crime, black mob violence, black on white, black on Asian, black on young, black on old, black on gay, black on whatever criminality in their town. I mean, when I think of that, the first thing I think of is the suburb of St. Louis, Ferguson. I mean, every night for how many days, how many weeks did we see buildings on fire? Did we see people shooting at cops? Did we see enormous amounts of mayhem, violence? It was anarchy, violent anarchy. But every night following the anarchy and during the anarchy, you'd get these St. Louis reporters looking into the camera and dutifully reporting that the protests were largely peaceful. The national media followed suit. The protests were largely peaceful.
They've largely been peaceful. They've largely been peaceful. They've largely been peaceful. They've largely been peaceful. They've largely been peaceful. They've largely.
So if thousands of people rampaging through Ferguson, the suburb of St. Louis, setting buildings on fire and attacking cops is largely peaceful, what do you think they're going to feel when the St. Louis Metro becomes the site of daily threats, harassment, assaults, and even murder? I mean, what are they going to say about that? No, they're going to look at you in the eye and say the Metro is perfectly safe. That's how they roll in St. Louis. Every once in a while, though, a story kind of slips through the cracks, captures a little bit of imagination. And there was a recent development on one of those stories that happened in St. Louis. This story happened in 2015. A white dude's riding home on the Metro. A bunch of the fellas come up, and here's what happened to him.
Mark Paffrath knows this photo is disturbing, but he says he wants everyone watching to see exactly what a group of crooks did to him. He says Friday night around 11:30, he stepped on the train at the Rock Road stop. The door's shut.
And then the gentleman in the front seat tells him, get him. And as soon as he says that, I got some guy choking me, another guy punching me in the eye, and two other people reaching into my pockets, robbing me.
Mark says 5 men were in on the attack. There was nothing he could do but scream.
I was in shock, felt almost paralyzed here. I got one guy holding me down and choking me, and another guy hit me in my left eye, and two other people robbing me. I felt paralyzed and helpless.
The train stopped at Del Mar and the men ran off. Mark says it was hard to get a clear description of them all. However, he did say one of the men was in his early 20s wearing a blue hoodie and jeans. As authorities continue their investigation, he hopes Metrolink increases security on their trains because he says there wasn't a single guard on his ride.
Something needs to be done about this security issue. Here people get attacked every day, it seems, on the Metrolink, and it just got to end sometime.
So they ended up arresting 2 of these guys for that. Now, one thing we don't hear that much on this channel is, well, what happens to these guys? So you just heard what happened. This guy, Jesse Boone, and a couple of fellas, 5 altogether, they came up to this white guy. They surrounded him. They attacked him. They beat him. They robbed him. This was like a very well thought out, concerted, premeditated thing. What would you do? What would be a fair sentence for somebody doing that to you or to your family? What would it be? Would you let him go with a slap on the wrist? With a promise he would be a good boy and never do it again? Would you do that? That's what happened to Jesse Boone. A year later, he went to, when he got sentenced, they suspended his sentence. And all these sentence suspensions are all contingent upon Jesse looking at the judge, Jesse looking at his psychologist, promising he would never do anything like that again. Because, hey, that's not who he is. That's even, to me, that fact that we learned about what happened to Jesse Boone is even more startling than the story this next story involving what Jesse was up to the other night.
Sure are. This is the second murder surrounding Metrolink in less than a month.
Yeah, they do, because they need to get more security out here. For real, for real.
18-year-old Dijon Oates is charged with murder, armed criminal action, and unlawful possession of a firearm. Police say he and 22-year-old Jesse Boone got into a fight on the back of the Metrolink train as it pulled into the South Umsel station.
We have to do the best that we can to make the system as safe as we can.
He says bi-state and local law enforcement agencies dedicate more than 220 police, deputies, and security officers to the transportation system. But with last night's homicide and the murder at the Busch Stadium stop just weeks ago, Nation says everything is on the table when it comes to making Metrolink safer.
We try to have people all over the system, but as everyone will tell you, it's very difficult to have someone at every location, 21 hours a day that the system is actually running.
Not all Metrolink riders are frightened. Matthew Rader has been riding it for a dozen years.
I've never felt unsafe on Metrolink, so I think the security they have is great. Obviously, I know a lot of other people feel unsafe, so if they stepped it up, it's not going to hurt anything.
Now, John Nations points out that statistically, Metrolink is safe, and he also knows, and he said that a statistic does not make people safe, nor does it make them feel safe.
New tonight, we're learning that the latest person shot on a Metrolink train also once admitted to an assault on a Metro train himself. Back in December of 2015, Jesse Boone was involved in an assault and robbery on Metrolink. He pleaded guilty and received a suspended sentence.
We need more cops. We need more security. We need more cameras. We need more bars on our windows. We need more this. We need more that.
Well, the people of St. Louis have decided, for reasons of their own, when they catch people involved in violence and criminal acts, they're basically they're not going to treat them as perpetrators, but they're going to treat them as victims of white racism. That's why a guy like Mr. Boone gets a suspended sentence for that ridiculous act of violence that he committed that should have sent him to prison, period. So the cops can't help that. The cops can't help you if you let your judges, you let your elected official appoint judges who absolutely refuse to send people to prison engaged in violence. Remember, when you scratch the surface of one of these judges, you'll probably find them at a seminar talking about breaking the school to prison pipeline, and there's too many black people in prison for no reason whatsoever, and that's why we got to stop sending black people to prison, because that's proof positive that white people are always picking on black people for no reason whatsoever. Oh, listen, this is what we heard ad nauseum in St. Louis during the St. Louis riots. And it played out on a big scale, it played out on a small scale in the metro all the time. It's catch and release. The cops can't do a damn thing about it as long as people in St. Louis keep shrugging their shoulders when judges keep letting violent offenders back on the street. No matter how violent St. Louis gets, no matter how difficult it becomes to ride the St. Louis Metro, they always find one white clown, some urban pioneer, who will look at the camera and go, "Oh no, I feel perfectly safe here. I've been riding here a long time." And then they always get the reporter to remind us, "Oh yeah, the crime statistics are way down. This thing is safe. Nothing ever happens on the Metro. Riding the Metro is largely peaceful." But then you talk to the people who actually ride the Metro, and you talk to about some of the crimes that are impossible to ignore, like the 5 guys who beat the hell out of that white guy. So many stories from the Metro. And the same reporters who are telling us that Ferguson was largely peaceful are now telling us the Metro is largely safe. Both fairy tales. Both good examples of denial, deceit, and delusion from reporters and public officials whose only goal in their life is to do everything in St. Louis not to make the black kids angry.